Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "You Can Absolutely Wait to Speak to the Owner, Long." Just found this sub and wanted to share my story from more than 20 years. I was attending grad school at the time to finish my doctoral degree, which I'm only mentioning as relevant because the customer made a crack about intelligence, while working at my father's business, an auto salvage yard. Our yard was located in New Jersey and this event occurred in August, so it was hot and very humid. I was generally very dirty when I was at work with grease and grime all over my arms and clothes. If you washed your hands and arms every time they looked dirty, your skin would just get dry and irritated, so with the exception of stopping to eat, I was absolutely filthy all day long. Our yard mostly dealt with shops and small independent mechanics who came in looking just as dirty as I was, so it was completely normal. Another point relevant to this story is this: I look absolutely nothing like my father. He is 5'8" and weighs at most 140 pounds and I am 6 feet 2 inches, and back then I was powerlifting at weighed right around 220 pounds. So here's my story. A guy comes in to pick up something he bought when I was not there that had to be taken out of a car. I don't even remember what it was now, but it was something fairly heavy, for him, not for me, and dirty. If we had parts in our warehouse, they'd get scrubbed and cleaned, by me, before being labeled and cataloged, but parts coming right off a car just had the loose grime knocked off. So, the guy comes in looking very out of place for our yard, wearing a button-down shirt, khakis and dress shoes. He hands me his receipt and I tell him I'll bring it out the side door. I walk out with his item on a hand truck and the only vehicle I see parked is an Acura sedan, very unlike the beat-up shop vehicles most of our customers drove. The guy is walking around the front of his car talking on his phone, but the trunk is open, so I bring the hand truck around and leave his item on the ground with a piece of cardboard to keep his trunk clean and go back inside. A few minutes later he comes inside wanting to know what he is supposed to do with the part, to which I facetiously reply, "Install it, I imagine." He wants to know why the part is dirty. I reply, "It's used." He wants to know how he is supposed to get it home. I reply, "In your car." He wants to know why I didn't put the item in his trunk, and I point to the sign behind him, which admittedly is partially obscured by the open door, which says that we are not responsible for loading parts due to liability for possible damage to the customer's vehicle. He turns around looking pissed and shouts, "What am I supposed to do now, genius? Because I must be dumb if I'm dirty, right?" There are now 2 other customers by the office and I know them both well, so I tell them I'll be right with them and walk around outside to the guy's car because I just want him gone. I throw a blanket over the rear bumper of his car, remind him that I'm not liable for damage, and I lift the piece up and gently put in on the cardboard in his car. To do this without damaging anything, I had to put one of my hands on the side of the trunk and I left a huge greasy handprint, largely on purpose. While I'm loading, he is standing so close to me, supervising, that my arm bumps his arm and his sleeve gets dirty. The entire time this exchange has been going on, he has been on his phone and he is now ranting into his phone about our interaction, and he calls me genius again. And I reply, "You came to a salvage yard to pick up a heavy, dirty used part in dress clothes with a luxury car. Who's the genius?" At that point, he also noticed the grease on his car and his dirty sleeve, and he wants to know if the owner is here, and I tell him Bob is working out in the yard. He demands to speak to him and I say fine. We walk back around to the office and I point to Bob, who is way out in the yard on the forklift moving cars that are going to the crusher. This is time sensitive because the truck will come to pick them up and block the entire street while we load, so we have to be ready. He starts to walk into the yard and I try to stop him and tell him it is too dangerous. He keeps walking, so I point out that our Doberman is trotting along behind the forklift. She was actually our dog from home and very friendly, but we brought her with us every day because we couldn't get home to let her out. He sees the dog and stops, and I tell the guy he has to wait until Bob is finished moving vehicles and it will be a while, which he says is fine because he is going to tell Bob exactly how his customers are being treated. Over the next 40 minutes, I walk past the guy multiple times helping customers, and each time I pass him, he mutters something about me being fired and me being sorry. Finally, the forklift shuts down and Bob stands up and my new friend seems ecstatic, banging on the counter and telling me that Bob is done and he wants to speak to him immediately. I walk outside with my new friend right next to me, climb up on a car's fender and wave my arms to get Bob's attention and scream, "Hey Dad, this guy wants to talk to you." And with that my new buddy says, "Duck you," turns and walks out, hops in his car and guns it up the street. Next one is titled, "Sure, I can hang around and help." Much like other posts, it's a story that was years ago and involves my foray into service management. I had been in my position at my location in a service management position and was consistently rated as the highest competent manager by my associates and had the highest client survey rating. Fact is, I just don't believe in treating coworkers like shit even if they're a slave laborer, and when they need help, I'll help them, and if it's not right away, they know I'm doing so when I can. During my last year with the company I received my annual service review and, frankly, I know it means nothing and I'm fully aware that no one ever gets a perfect score, because that'd indicate you know everything and are unteachable. So who could truly be that right? Anyways, a mandatory part of finalizing the review process is signing off. My location's manager tells me to sign my review as she leaves to go home early to indicate that I've reviewed it and I can close the door to simply lock it. This is very normal and nothing anyone thinks about as far as the process, as we all do this. I go ahead inside and do it, but notice she left the screen on and I see my name on it for a quick second. I sign my name really quick but decide to take a quick peek. The darned thing is that the monitor in her office is made to auto-lock after 5 minutes of no activity, and she must have assumed that it locked already or forgotten that to log off. I go in my review and see my scores and see my position is still the same. I do notice, however, that the keywords aggregated most commonly from my coworkers, such as great team player, to mentor, and assists with passion, is contrasted with her summary of me at this location, which is normally kept private and privy to her and our regional manager's eyes, as generally a big loner and doesn't communicate with others on the team and tends to ignore pleas and requests for assistance. Needs to really place others before himself. Now I'm generally both pissed and surprised at this point and decide to simply walk out and think about what was stated. The next day I show up for work and get asked to meet her in the office. According the same boss lady mentioned above, my distinctive positive scores and praise by my coworkers and peers have earned me the right to a promotion and begins to offer me the position immediately below her. Now I don't know what really went in on my head, but I blurt out something to the effect of, "Yeah, I'm actually leaving the company in 2 months." Far from the truth, but I suppose I was under the impression of my review still and make this giant lie to basically force myself to leave and just say, "Duck it," to myself. She's shocked and asks why I never told her I was job hunting, to which I reply, "Well, I was leaving in a few months when contracted, so I didn't want to say anything yet until you were settled in." She's shocked, I'm not, and she leaves for the day with mixed emotions. I have to set in stone which exact date I leave, and I do. It also turns out to be our inventory period, and I intentionally set my last date to the day after our inventory so I can help out my friends. During this time I get 3 times goodbye parties and meet the 2 folks who will replace me in my duties. Yes, they literally set themselves to hire 2 people to do my job. I tell them there's no hard feelings and such. Honestly, I wish them luck and advise them best as I can, because I know no one will take the time to teach them, and I kind of pity them for that. On my official last day, the bossy lady has to work a day she never worked ever in her entire 10 years with the company, because that is my final day. In her agitation, she says to come in next week and she'll make sure I'm paid and to hand in my company provided items. You see, the problem is I can only hand them in to her, and her purpose of being there was to ensure that at the end of the day she gets it and everything goes smoothly. So the malicious compliance follows. I ask when a good time is for her to receive them and she says, "Whenever, and I'll pay you for the trip," and I go, "Okay." I honestly didn't think of anything much and frankly thought this was the end of it anyways as far as our work relationship goes. So I come in 10 days later and say, "Hi," to everyone and bring donuts. I ask for the boss lady and get annoyed to learn she isn't there and have to hand it to my replacement as was her instruction to him. He takes it and gives me a receipt, but I mention that she said to pay me for my travel, to which he states that he was made aware of that. He puts in my former timecard slot a pay request for time traveled for me and I leave. A full 2 months later I'm talking to my friend and he casually mentions how they're still purging my info from the system. We laugh about this and I ask which system am I still on and he replies, the attendance system. I pause, then burst out laughing and ask why she's so freaked out by that. According to my friend, the problem was my last week was the end of the new period and why our inventory was shifted this year to correspond to it. But because my travel time was added to a new period, it made me automatically eligible for that quarter's bonus. And, because my bonus is based on merit and position, it would be the second highest in the location. To add insult to injury and pour more salt on the wound, because I wasn't featured in the system as a full-time active employee, my bonus would be a penalty on her end and cause her to lose a percentage of her bonus in return. Sure enough, at the end of the period where I came in and dropped off my items for submission, I get my check for my bonus. In the end, I complied with all of her requests fully and properly, but because of her improper assessment and inability to secure her monitor, I end up getting a free bonus check at her expense. I also ended up finding another job 2 weeks before I was slated to leave that was far less stressful, where I'd be assigned a full workday to finish tasks that I'd have 3 hours to finish in my prior job. None of this was ever planned and it honestly felt amazing to discover one of the few times my gut instinct worked out. Next one is titled, Just Following Orders. I used to work at GM and we had an area behind a wall on the line that hydraulic equipment, computer equipment and a bunch of other things that would ruin the line. There was also a desk in there, a couple of chairs and a bench. This area maintenance often went into to set down read over materials, do paperwork and just wait for the next breakdown. Sometimes they would take breaks in there so they're close by in order to quickly get to the next breakdown. Well, this day on first shift they had just had a major breakdown that caused a couple hours of downtime. At that time second shift maintenance was coming in and talking to first shift maintenance to get updates on the line when the superintendent walked in. Superintendent of the department came down see what happened just before the end of the shift. The superintendent was mad that he had all this downtime to account for, and seen the workers sitting there he was ticked and started hollering at them. He said he didn't want to see any more desks, chairs or benches anywhere around and they were to cut them up and throw them into the trash. And when he came in tomorrow he didn't want to see any more of that stuff. Like I said earlier, it was the end of the shift. The second shift maintenance worker went on to cut everything up, throw it away and then went up to the break room, which is beside of the foreman's and superintendent's offices, for break. Seeing that there were more desks and chairs in the offices, he proceeded to cut them up in order to comply with the superintendent's orders. In our contract, if we are given a direct order we must obey. Well, you can imagine next morning superintendent showed up in that there are no more foremen for superintendent's desks or chairs to be seen. The superintendent went off and started threatening fire him. Maintenance worker demanded to see his union rep. And when he showed up, he told the union rep that superintendent ordered them the day before to cut up all desks and chairs he saw in the throw them in the trash and he was just following orders. Superintendent was steamed. Hopefully he learned to be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. Last one is titled, You Reap What You Sow. This was years ago in an old job. I came down with a serious case of gastroenteritis. We're talking both ends, non-stop, all day, all night, serious. I couldn't hold down water, it was so severe. I worked in an office where we shared desks, and because gastro is super contagious, I told my manager. I explained what was wrong and she threatened to reprimand me if I left sick. I phoned the doctor, and got an emergency appointment, explained that we only get stat sick if we're off, 1 day's pay for the entire week, and what my manager had said. The doc gave me anti-sickness and anti-D tablets to try and ease it, but this was relentless. The tablets did nothing. So I go into work and I'm disappearing to the loo for one or the other every 5 minutes without fail. I hadn't slept for about 2 days, I had sweats, I was pale and my eyes were bugging out. But my boss just refused to accept I was ill. Now I had some of the best productivity stats in the office, so the massive drop in my productivity caused the bigwigs to notice and I got pulled into a meeting. I explained everything, what my boss said, that the doctor had told me I needed to be off because it's super contagious, and that I was left in a situation where I had to come in. The boss freaked. My manager was pulled into a meeting and destroyed. I was assured for that I would never be penalized because of what it was. 6 other people ended up off sick and I got an extra 2 days annual leave as an apology so I didn't take them to our. Best bit? My manager was one of the people that caught it. They were off for nearly 2 weeks and the bosses, and not so few words, basically said they deserved it for what they'd said to me. Thanks for listening.